Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I am here with friends to talk about women's professional road cycling. We're back with the regular team post Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. Georgie, how? Well, you never went anywhere.
No, I didn't. And I'm here in my dressing gown. It's really comfy and cozy. It's my home one.
Yeah.
It's very cozy.
Wait, your home one? Do you have multiple?
Yeah, I've got three.
Okay, fair enough. Gracie Elvin, welcome back. We missed you.
Yeah, hello. It feels like I've been away from this pod for ages, but I listened to all of the ones that I've missed, especially the daily pods on the tour, which were amazing. So good job, team. But super nice to be back. And I've seen one of Georgie's dressing gowns. She's brought one to my house even.
Yep, different one to this one.
The travel gown.
It's the travel gown. It travels really well. It's nice and light.
Loren, did you also get to see Georgie's travel gown when you were in France?
Sadly, no, but I guess because of the summer weather there, it would have been like some silky kind of thing with short sleeves.
Yeah.
Do you have one of those?
It was. I mean, like, I didn't actually didn't bring a gown to France because it was too hot for anything else.
Well, on that note, we have an interesting show for everyone today. There's a bit of breaking news that happened over the weekend that we'll dive into, and then the Tour de Romandie, which includes GPS Gate, and we'll talk about that. So let's get things started. I think first we can talk about the biggest news in women's cycling, apart from Tour de Romandie and everything that happened there, is that Charlotte Kool cut her contract with Picnic Post-Nl a year early to join Fenix-Decuninck effective immediately. So she leaves the team, even though she had through 2026 on her contract with Picnic Post-Nl. She will be riding for Fenix-Decuninck in her next race, which I think we can assume will be the CMAC Ladies Tour, or perhaps one of the smaller races coming up in Belgium or something, one of the one days. But yeah, I think in terms of World Tour, the focus is on recovery from her Baloise Ladies Tour crash, and then she will line up for Fenix-Decuninck, which there's so many layers to this story. One is like the decision to leave the team before the season is done. I've been trying to dig into what that means for UCI points for both teams and have come up empty-handed, because that is just a whole kettle of fish. Neither team is close to relegation, so it doesn't really matter in terms of the points, but I was curious about what that means for the points that Kool has been able to collect in the last two seasons. What it means for Fenix-Decuninck going into the flatter classics, because they were so good in the hilly classics this year. And yet another rider leaving Picnic Post-Nl prematurely after Lorena Wiebes already did that. There's been a handful of men on the men's side that have left the team early. And they have a couple other riders who are set to leave that have not been announced yet. So that's an interesting storyline that will continue to develop.
Yeah, you have to imagine that something happened, because you don't just leave a team it's not quite mid-season, but you know what I mean by that, in not waiting for at least this year to run its course and then just not do the next year. Like, it was probably like a bunch of things that all kind of stacked up, and then maybe one last thing that just tipped it over the edge. But we know that team is highly prescriptive and somewhat controlling, and it suits some riders and not others. So maybe that was also part of it for her, in that she just felt a bit too hemmed in or not getting the right kind of support, because they do give really good support, but yeah, like I said, doesn't suit everybody.
My impression of that team as well is if everything is going really good for you, then it seems that riders are happy on that team. But as soon as there's like some hiccups, or maybe, yeah, you're just, I don't know, you've been injured or ill, or you're just not having the season that they predicted for you, then it turns sour pretty quickly.
They also tend to like put riders in a box, and Lorena Wiebes kind of hinted at this a little bit on her when she went on the La Course to Gossip podcast last week, that when she was with the team, they really wanted to hone her sprinting and make her the best possible sprinter. So that's really all she did. And moving to SC Works Pro Time, they wanted to develop her more as an all-around rider. And we've seen how much she's improved with being able to do a variety of different races. And I think with Kool, for the last couple of years, as she's kind of become this pure sprinter, they've really like taped up the box of what she can do as a rider and been like, okay, well, she's a sprinter. We'll just leave her in there. And that means that she hasn't actually raced many races that aren't just bound to end in a bunch sprint. So I'm curious to see what this does for her moving forward as a rider. Like if she will be able to adapt a little bit with various different types of races that I'm assuming that they will put her in as one of their top riders now on the road.
Did Phoenix have an out sprinter?
Not really. I was digging into like who will her lead out situation be at Phoenix, and they don't have a lot of riders announced for next year yet, but assuming that like Julie DeVield and Martha Troyan will be in the conversation for being part of her lead out train. But they don't, in like most of the sprinty races, they don't have a rider who has really performed.
Well, you have to assume that a rider goes across a sprinter, goes across to a team knowing that they're going to have a good train, or they are taking riders with them. So maybe she will be.
Maybe she's taking. Yeah,
taking a couple of riders from Picnic with her, or even knowing there's a couple from other teams that she would love to have to support her.
Yeah, I wonder how many are out of contract at Picnic. And I know on that same podcast episode with Lorena, there was a slip by Florcher where she hinted that Franzi Cox might also be out of contract and moving on. So potentially could be following Kool to Phoenix.
I heard elsewhere also that Megan Jastrab is out of contract as well.
Which would make sense then. Megan is like a good sprinter.
Mm-hmm. So that will be, yeah. And I mean, they're a team that they have riders on the team that have absolutely thrived there. Like Fight for Georgie has been there for years and years and had a really good experience, I think, based on the fact that she's continuously like stayed with the team. But yeah, like to Lauren's point, they definitely have a limited bandwidth for understanding when a rider is having a rough season. So in her statement about leaving the team, she did say that she had the quote like, "There's no reason to leave," which I giggled at a little bit because obviously there is a reason to leave if she's leaving. But if there are as many riders leaving as it sounds like, that's going to be a really interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I guess now that we're approaching late August, all this sort of news is coming out now, particularly, all the riders. There weren't that many riders, I think, out of contract this year. Like when I say riders, I mean really top riders, because last year seemed to be a big contract year. And actually next year, 2026, anyone who's signed a 2-year deal, we're going to be seeing either extensions or changes in teams. But there were a few extensions actually that came out in the news with Little Trek. I think they extended 3 of their young riders for another 2 or 3 years. And I also saw Clara Caponi extended as well with Little Trek through to 2027. So they're clearly happy with her.
Yeah, and the sickest reveal photo ever. Like that post-up she did at the Schwab Women's Classic will go down in history as like the most iconic post-up ever.
Yeah, I think we're not in for as insane of a transfer season this year, obviously, with it being the year after an Olympic year. A lot of riders who were up for contract at the end of last year would have signed a 2-year at least, and so they will be set for next season already. But Esme Peppercamp is also out with Picnic Post now, Abby Smith and Francesca Barale. So there's like quite a few riders of that team that potentially are leaving. And in the transfer conversation, we also had the announcement that Liva Lilijeka moved 3 of their Continental team riders up to the World Tour team for next year in Noah Jensen, who actually there was a really, kind of devastating, but also a little bit hopeful post from Natasha Kanavan about Noah and her story with an eating disorder and coming out of the other side and now signing for Liva Lilijeka's World Tour team. And Matilda Vitillo also is moving up along with Mackenzie Copeland. So three riders from their Continental team moving into the big leagues.
Yeah, I've raced with all of these riders, and it's I think the level in which they're racing at, and like they had that development team had its struggles early on, but it seems to have really hit its rhythm. And yeah, these women have like proven themselves, particularly Noah and Mathilde. Not the others haven't, but those guys have really impressed in their own results. Yeah, I'm keen to see how they go at the World Tour level. I think it's just another example of a development pathway that's been established within the Women's World Tour, which is, we need more of them.
One that's established and is working well. Yeah, I have a lot of faith in it.
Yeah, exactly.
The other bit of pretty bummer of a bit of news that came out over the weekend is that Sarah Gigante crashed on Thursday in training and broke her femur. So that's her season done. And what a season it was. The highs and lows.
It's just another example of this sport, man.
Mara Roldan.
Mara Rowland. Mara.
She's back on a bike.
She's the picnic rider who won Tour of Britain and then breaks her femur the next day.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Like, that's a horrific injury. This sport is so cruel. Like,
Crazy.
you could be literally coming second on the Queen stage of the Tour de France and then in training one day, slip on some mud and break your femur. Like, that's why I think like the level of rigor, of care and like safety that we need to put around these riders from a financial perspective as well, job security perspective is so important.
I think with that note, we can move into talking about probably what will take up the majority of the podcast today, and that is Tour de Romandie. We had Tour de Romandie over the weekend, the 3-day World Tour stage race. This is the 4th edition of it. Last year won by Lotte Kopecky, and with a nice balance of stages, a time trial in quotations, since Georgie's sitting right here, a mountaintop finish, and then a hillier kind of circuity type stage for the final stage. And I think looking at the start list going into this race, I was really excited to see how teams like Little Trek would do. They had probably the strongest team on the start list going into the race. Casino Niewiadoma Finney was slated to do it. And then, we had another strong team with AG Insurance. And in the hours before the time trial got underway on Thursday, rumblings started to come out that 6 teams were going to be disqualified from the race before the start of the time trial. In the end, only 5 teams were disqualified: Canyon SRAM, Zonda Crypto, EF Education Oatly, Little Trek, Team Picnic PostNL, and Visma Lisa Bike. So it was a massive blow to the race, and only 63 riders finished the time trial. To just rub a little bit of salt in the wound, the UCI did require some of the riders from each team to actually roll to the start, and then they disqualified them on the spot so that the race would still qualify for World Tour, because 90 riders need to start in order for the race to be a World Tour race with World Tour points. So they worked around their own rules there. But it all kind of, the whole mess kind of started with the UCI announced a week ago, or a little over a week ago, that the Tour of Romandie would be a testing ground for a new GPS tracker that they are going to use on all of the bikes at the World Championships in Rwanda. And this is, according to the UCI, in response to Muriel Ferrer, who passed away at the World Championships last year in the junior race when she crashed and then wasn't found. And we all know how horrific that story is. And just horrible situation that happened there. And a lot of calls for safety came out of that situation. And one of the safety things that the UCI is now trying to implement is these GPS trackers. What happened was a confrontation between the UCI and the teams in question. All of them are Velon teams, which is a separate organization from the UCI, started by teams back in 2014, I think it was. And teams came together to try to monetize part of cycling by making data available to the public. Like when you see little on-screen snippets of power numbers and stuff like that, a lot of it is thanks to Velon. They tried their own race series, the Hammer series, which was just phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. But ended up having to cancel the series after a legal battle with the UCI, where Velon tried to sue the UCI we can get into the weeds about this conversation. And I think what has come out this week is that there are many, many layers to the teams being disqualified from Tour de Romandie. And what is on the surface is that the team said they would be happy to put the GPS units, they would happy for the GPS units to be on one rider per team's bike, which is what the UCI said in the beginning, is that one rider from each team would wear this GPS unit at this race as a test going into Worlds. The teams in question said, then you install it, you take it off at the end of each stage, you charge it, and you be liable if anything were to go wrong. And the UCI said, no, you need to pick the rider and you need to deal with the device itself. And the teams said no, and the UCI said, you're disqualified. And there's a lot more to it than just the GPS tracker. I think that the way that the UCI has put this forward and the statement that they've released after the race about it being a deplorable situation from the teams that refuse to wear this GPS tracker, which is not the case, paints it as it being like the teams are refusing to implement a safety feature that will make the racing safer, where in reality, this is another instance where the UCI has, without any consultation or input from any of the other stakeholders in cycling, the teams or the union, CPA, that's a whole nother sticky thing that we will probably talk about in a second. They've tried to slap this thing onto the teams, and the teams are like, no, we're pushing back, and the UCI disqualified these 5 teams. That meant that all of the riders who were on the start list for this race for those teams weren't able to race. Now they all have a disqualification mark against them. So really, the big losers in this situation were the riders and the race organizers who go through, a year plus of planning to make these races happen. And I could keep going on and on because there's just so much about this, but I will stop talking now so that you guys can also have some input. But like laying the groundwork for trying to have this conversation in the first place is like, there's like 20 different directions I can go, and it's all just like every single road leads to Shelob's lair.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about. I'm keen to hear what Georgie's take on this is. She looks like she's winding up for a good one.
Don't know if you guys saw me grab. I got my feet up and I'm in my dressing gown. There's a lot of dissonance in my outfit versus what's happening inside. There's a furor burning, stoking the flames. Don't know if you saw how viciously I grabbed my microphone before, but I think talking to some riders who actually got to race the race, and I was asking what's going on. They're like, this is just another example of the UCI throwing their weight around. Like we saw it with the handlebars. We saw it with like this. Like we got a 14-minute voice note from Adam Hansen from Safar around the handlebar stuff, which he was just touting with such confidence that they had done their due diligence and they had done their work. In consultating with those who needed to be consultated with. But we were on the ground on the Tour de France. We were talking to the mechanics, which I hope to get an article out soon, from various teams, and they had shit. Like there was no talk from the UCI. They came to the teams, they measured the bikes, and then that was it. That was the only stakeholder consultation that was done by the UCI in regards to the handlebar gate. And now we've got GPS gate, where once again the UCI is thinking like, they are, a lord above everyone else, and they can just implement whatever they want without thinking about the rest of the people in this ecosystem. And it affects more than just the race itself. It affects so many other things. And like Abby, you wrote in your article, like contract cadences. The season is essentially over for a lot of these riders. Like if they're out of contract, how the hell are they going to prove themselves for the remainder of the season? Like the agent's like, we need to get a result. It's like, well, sorry, I had no chance to get a result because I wasn't even allowed to hit the start line because of some broad sweeping rule that the UCI put in that they weren't willing to budge on because of their pride. Ultimately, this comes down to ego and pride, and that's what really pisses me off.
Yeah, and I think the UCI wants us to think that this is the teams refusing some kind of safety, something that will make the racing safer, and that is absolutely not the case. It goes so much deeper than the GPS unit. And I mean, if you're looking at the riders specifically and how this impacts the riders, like there are riders like Guy Rialini, who's barely been able to race this year due to other circumstances. And she was third in this race last year, and coming to this race was a huge deal for her. And then she wasn't even allowed to start. And you have riders who, are up for contract, who this was a great opportunity for them. It's a smaller tour after the Tour de France. There's a bunch of different forms going into this race. People who raced the Giro who then had a break and are now coming back for Worlds. You had people coming hot off the tour like, Shabby, which we'll talk about the actual racing in a minute. But this really overshadowed the race, which is a whole other point of this whole situation, that you have, like, imagine you're a fan who you got into watching women's cycling because of this year's Tour de France, and you tune into the next World Tour race and 5 teams are disqualified. There's 63 riders starting. And then the second stage, there was only like 25 kilometers of live coverage of the whole stage. And it's like, what? Like, we were really spoiled at the tour. And now, like, the bar has fallen back to the floor, and it's, I feel like the whole thing, nobody looks good coming out of this. Like, the teams don't look good. And a lot of that is the spin being put on it by the UCI and by Safer and the CPA. And, the UCI doesn't look good coming out of it. And the whole thing is just such a mess. The whole thing is such a mess. And it's like the riders who suffer at the end.
I did wonder that if they wanted to trial these GPS devices in a men's race, if this fiasco would have unfolded the same way. And I think probably not, actually. And I'm sad that it's happened for this race, the Tour of Romandie, that's trying to gain traction as a premier event. I feel sorry for the teams in a kind of a good way. At least it was all the top teams. So it was Trek, Visma, Canyon, EF, and Picnic. So it would have arguably been worse if it was the smaller teams being disqualified just for that impact that it would have on those riders trying to get momentum in their own careers. But I definitely don't want to take away the significance that it had on the big teams and those big riders. Like Raylene was a good example, Abby, of someone that really lost out in this. Lots of other riders really lost out in this. And at the end of the day, the riders probably had zero to little say in how this all unfolded, because it was really the teams versus UCI, not so much the riders. So I don't think that there's a teams union, but there's definitely a teams collective where team managers will come together to discuss certain elements of racing and economics and, in effect, unionize. And that's what's kind of happened in this regard. I think that they did the right thing, and unfortunately the riders have lost out mostly, but they were just trying to make sure that a precedent wasn't set in that, which currently already happens in cycling, in that a small amount of stakeholders get the most amount of reward for big decisions, big events, and that the money, the economics in cycling, which we've talked about endlessly, is just not a great model. And this was one of those instances where the teams are trying to say, we're trying really hard to make this sustainable. We're trying really hard to run a business here. And if you're coming in, bringing in a device, and in some ways it was a Trojan horse device of safety, when it could bring with it other impacts, such as owning data or owning other elements of what the teams should own themselves, it kind of opens the door for the UCI to then keep taking ownership of other elements of racing. And that's exactly the opposite direction in what we want the sport to go, and especially what the teams want the sport to go in. So it's a stupid situation, but it's like the UCI should have egg on their face, but it doesn't seem like they even care. It feels like they're just going to, they just love to double down.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely love to double down.
Yeah, it's a really, and I think the point you made, Grace, because I think you made a lot of really great points, but the point you made about how the only big teams that were the ones that kind of spoke up kind of speaks to the power imbalance that there really is in the women's peloton, that the fact that smaller teams don't feel like they have the ability to stand up and say, actually, no, this is our data, these are our riders, this is our equipment. We ultimately they probably, like, the relative impact on them is probably greater, no? Like, if something was to happen, and if the UCI was to take advantage of that situation, but yet felt like they had no power in that situation to speak up and say, actually, we're not comfortable with this.
And you're 100% spot on, Georgie, because I've had conversations with a lot of the continental teams about other stuff, and they just feel like all the UCI cares about now is this shiny golden thing called the World Tour, and everything else below it they couldn't really give an F about. And, there's more to it as well. Of course, these teams, they need to race, right? I mean, the World Tour teams need to race as well, but these smaller teams, they're fighting for the scraps at the end of the day right now. And for them to just show up, and to that point about contracts and everything, these riders are trying to show themselves so they can move up to that pro level, that World Tour level. And yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think your article is really good, Abby, and you made some points there that there was this tug of war, and it's like the teams knew that there would be potentially a situation where they showed up and maybe they wouldn't race. But I think it was Waters who said he thought the UCI would stand down, but they didn't. And I wonder if the UCI had already made up their mind, but they wanted the teams to show up so the riders could get disqualified, so it could still be classified as a World Tour race, because that would have been really shit for the organisers of Tour de Romandie and that race moving forwards as well. I think Shabby was the one who was saying that the race was struggling to find funds as well. So, to say that you're going to have these top riders showing up to do this race is actually very important for a race to continue in the years to come.
Yeah, and they lost out on having, Neo Domifini on the start line, who is the Tour de France champion, which is a huge blow to the race. And I think because of the losses in the start list, I mean, I know I was a little bit less interested in the racing itself, just put off a little bit. It was still amazing racing, and we'll talk about it in a second, but not having a full lineup of riders on the start list impacted the race overall and how the race was raced. I think, like, there's so many good points that were just made, and I want to circle back to a couple of them, because one of the things Gracie said was brought up to me by multiple riders, that if it had been a men's race, then this never would have happened. And I think that one rider pointed out that the UCI, maybe they thought that by picking the Tour de Romandie, which is in Switzerland, and obviously the UCI headquarters is in Switzerland, so there's ties there. And by picking this race, a smaller race that's a women's race, they thought that they could quietly roll this into the peloton and not have any pushback or unification. And one of the riders I talked to said that it was a real shame that more teams didn't step up and say something or like push back on it. And obviously, like, if you're looking at the teams that participated, a lot of them, like Nexodus, which is a Swiss team, this was their home race, that they don't get invited to other World Tour races. So for them, it was a huge deal to be there. You've got like Uno X Mobility and Volker-Wessels, who are both fighting for points to be part of the World Tour conversation in 2026. There's like so many layers to that. And then there was a lot of talk after all of this happened about the fact that all the teams that were disqualified are Velon teams. And I saw some people saying like, oh, well, Velon just want to protect, they have their own GPS device that they've been using for years and years. I think it was introduced in 2017 or 16. They made the first GPS device, and they've had it for years, and they've been able to have all this data on the riders with the consent of the riders, consent was a huge part of this conversation. And I think one of the reasons that the Velon teams were the ones that were able to stand up is because they're all part of Velon, they were able to unify together and have more conversations together. And the teams that aren't part of Velon just weren't weren't privy to those initial conversations to kind of get on board with each other's plans. And I mean, after this happened, the teams released they all released an individual statement, but it was basically the same statement from each of the teams that was disqualified. And I think like for Velon, obviously there is a monetary aspect of all of this, that they wouldn't want the UCI to put a GPS unit on all of the bikes moving forward, like next year in the World Tour, and make their data like completely irrelevant. And yeah, I mean, they've invested a lot into the sport. Why wouldn't they want to push back on it? Ooh, as we're talking, I've just received a statement from the Cyclist Alliance. Literally, this very second, it dropped into my email about this very topic.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I'll dive into it a little bit in the newsletter this week, because I think like there could be a lot more that we could say about this, but we should talk about the racing. But yeah, the whole situation is just. I liked, Gracie, when you said it's a Trojan horse situation. Like, it's not about the GPS tracker. It's so much deeper than that. And I think that that's a lot of what people are missing when they're talking about this conversation, that the teams never refused an element that would make the racing safer. That's not what happened. They were wary about something else entirely. And that seems to be something that's being missed, that along with the real impact on riders themselves.
Just to finish it off, I'm just getting a vibe from this situation that someone's brought in a brand new rule and a few people didn't agree with it, so then they got fired. And that reminds me of something other politicking that's currently been happening.
Oh, I don't know. What could you be
Expand
talking
on that.
about?
Yeah.
They're taking a page out of the United States of America. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe, potentially.
No, she's not saying that at all. This is we're Switzerland on this podcast.
No, I mean, it's a really good point. And the fact that they forced the riders that were disqualified to go to the start in order to be formally disqualified.
It's just bizarre that they brought in something new. I'm sure it's in the fine print somewhere, but then to then say to the start line anyway, it's just like, it's very abusive.
Why wouldn't you test this also at a lower level race? Why World Tour?
This is all about the UCI getting a stage for to flex their muscles. I think this year has been a big year for them in terms of critique. I think they just wanted to show that they're actually the boss and that people will fold to them.
They need a new PR person. That's what they need.
Yeah, one of the riders I talked to said, like, it's the conversation had been going on between the UCI and the teams for days, and could they not have just made the decision before everyone traveled to Switzerland and then had to travel back home again? Which they couldn't, because then it wouldn't be a World Tour race.
Why would they do that? There's less publicity around that, Abby. There's less publicity about, like, look what we made them do.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hoping is going to happen is the publicity that they wanted bites them in the butt, because I think, like, I mean, in the articles that I've written on Escape about this, I've been kind of interested to see how many people have been defending the UCI in the comments. And I just think that, like, there's really a lack of people just really need to understand, like, how much is actually going on here. And I want there to be publicity on this topic, because the teams and the riders really need to be able to speak up and stand up for themselves without this kind of situation happening. All right, let's talk about the Tour de Romandie just for a little bit, because I think we've really turned this into a rant that I was actually quite looking forward to be honest. Tour de Romandie, 3-day World Tour stage race. Fantastic racing with only 63 riders in the race. Paula Balassi, who won the opening uphill time trial by 17 seconds over Urska Zigart, who I think once the disqualifications happened, I was really looking at Urska to have a breakthrough race at this race. And I thought maybe that she was the the number one rider to beat, and she proved to be just that on the second stage, the mountaintop finish, where Elise Chabbey took her first World Tour victory, and Zegart moved into the overall lead. The third stage was a hilly one and offered a lot of opportunities with a really quite large early race breakaway going up the road, and FDJ Suez did a really good job controlling it. And as they got closer to the finish, within the final 12 kilometers, Elise Chabbey attacked. She was joined by Blasi, who won the first stage, and Blanca Voss. And it was a really perfectly well-timed move. And Zegart got caught out on a descent where she lost a little bit of momentum and had to chase for a while. So in the end, Elise Chabbey won the overall of the race by 7 seconds over Urška Zegart. So a breakthrough performance for multiple riders, Paula Blasi being one of them. And I didn't say who won the final stage. It was Blanca Voss. Blanca Voss won the final stage in that 3-up sprint. Chabbey was really going for the time at that point, so she basically just pulled all the way to the line once they got within the last 3 kilometers, and Voss took a really impressive win to sprint away from those two to win the stage. And a breakthrough ride for Chabbey, her first major victory in a World Tour race and her first overall as well. A huge win for FDJ Suez, coming off of a relatively slightly disappointing Tour de France Femme, since they didn't actually win anything there, and a breakthrough performance, I think, for Urška Zegart, who has been kind of getting better and better as the season has gone on. And I think this race with the mountaintop finish was a really good opportunity for her, and in the end, to only lose it by 7 seconds, I think that was something. She looked quite gutted after the finish, I guess rightfully so, but I think that there's very a couple things that she could have done, and maybe she would have won it, but I think second place is something she can be really, really happy with.
Yeah, I think Urška is just I think year on year she's just been getting better and better, and I think she actually performed quite well at this race last year as well, from memory. It seems to be a good hunting ground for her. Yeah, I think the smaller bunch would have definitely, she'd be the first one to say it was better for her. And I just I'm keen to see her continue to grow within the project that is AG Insurance Stadal. I really think they're building something quite phenomenal over there. And I think the other teams in the peloton should continue to be a bit scared and pay respect to that team, because I think there's some big things coming.
Yeah, we can't not talk about her teammate, right? And what an incredible job she has been doing this entire season, actually. But she was just so impressive.
Maria Benito.
Is it Maria?
Yeah. She was amazing.
Yeah.
She was incredible.
Yeah. Super consistent.
Yeah, uber domestique. And yeah, everything you said, Georgie, they're building something really special over there. I would say this year they have been the standout climbing team.
Yeah, them and Fenix-Decuninck, who really, they also were trying really, really hard to win this race with Yara Kastelein, and they really let it into the climb on stage 2. But in the end, Zegart was just a better climber than Kastelein, and the battle to the end of the second stage was really good, I think, between the riders that were kind of left out there on the road.
Left out on the road sounds very ominous.
Left to do their own thing on that climb.
I'm just pleased to see Elise Chabbey take the overall win. I've been really enjoying watching her racing this year with the FDJ team. She seems happy. She's been a super domestique for almost every race, and cool to just see her take the opportunity. But I'm sure there was pressure, but there hasn't been a whole lot of that kind of pressure on her for the whole year. So I think she would have relished it instead of feeling weighed down by it. And most of her wins have come from the Swiss road, so I'm sure that feels special for her as well. But I think nice to know that she's made a good decision to go to that team, knowing that she would be mostly in support of Vollering, and also then trying to compete for any other opportunity with the other talent on that team. So, I think that was cool to see her step up when the opportunity was given and do it despite probably feeling pretty tired by this point of the season.
Yeah, and she was a late race call up for the team. She wasn't actually supposed to be racing, but I think coming off of the incredible form that she showed at the Tour, for them to bring her into this race was a very good call. And like, I was kind of, the second stage, I was like wondering why she didn't try to attack more on that climb. And I think she played it really well. I think she was really smart about it. I mean, she took her first like major World Tour victory by winning the second stage. And I think going into that third stage, knowing that Urshka has a little bit of a harder time in the bunch, that going into that stage with only 8 seconds between them, it would be kind of Shabby's race to take with the way that she races and how good she is at reading a race and attacking and being on the front foot.
Going into the race, actually, it was Juliette Labousse that was their leader. So I think, like, as amazing it was for Shabby, she fell short again, which I find for her really disappointing for her. That, you know, she had that opportunity at the Giro. To your point, going into a team with Vollering, you know when Vollering is going to be the standout leader, let's say. I know they have multiple leaders, but she really is the standout leader. That's when it's a similar rider, it's always going to be challenging to find your opportunities. Yes, the calendar is growing. And I think she had these 2 leadership opportunities and unfortunately it fell short. I think she's just tired, maybe, Labousse, and it's been such a big year. You know, she started off the year so strong. I think she was like that uber domestique.
Strata.
Yeah, she was basically the reason why, not the reason why, but we were talking about her a lot early in the season, and it felt like when the Giro rolled around that would be her chance to go for that GC podium. And then I would say that in her mind as well, maybe Romandie. But I think just based off what we've seen the past couple of months, I think there's just some tired legs there. Great for the team, great for Shabby to get the win, but I was hoping for more just for her, actually.
Yeah, if you think about her load, like Giro, Tour, and then Romandie, it's a lot.
It is.
Yeah. Most of the riders at Romandie would have either skipped the Giro or the Tour.
Yeah.
Or not. Like, there was a lot of riders, actually, that haven't really raced much this summer if they didn't do either.
Exactly.
I mean, the victor of the Tour, the victor of the Tour de France. I don't think she's going to be racing for, like, she'll have done one race in about 6 months.
She's not going to race for, I mean, if she's not, she announced shortly after we recorded our podcast last week that she wouldn't race Worlds this year. So,
but she's doing Ardèche, funny enough.
Loves a French road, that girl.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is like a lovely climbing race. But when I saw that announcement, I thought it was kind of odd.
Man, imagine the crowds that are going to show up to Ardèche.
Yeah.
Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, the French winner of the Tour de France, Femme avec Zwift, rocks up to Ardèche. It's the race isn't going to know what hit it.
I'm guessing she doesn't have to stay in the camping grounds.
No. So Pauline wanted a break, but it was like the French tourism office that gave her a call and was like, look,
come to Ardèche.
We really need your help.
Oh, I forgot to mention with the GPS gate is what we're calling it over at Escape, is that the like president of the region of Romandie tried to put pressure on the UCI to let the riders race. So there was this like back and forth where like they went to bed thinking, oh, we're not going to race. And then they woke up and they were like, oh, you are going to race. And then they were told they weren't going to race. And then they went to the race at like 10 o'clock. And then at 10:45, they're like, oh, you're not going to race. And then the political leader of Romandie called Le Partien and was like, please let the riders race. And he was like, no.
Oh. Nightmare.
This is when you know, private enterprise is this is small g government. This is what this is.
Yeah. They say that women get emotional.
Anyway, elsewhere in the world, Chiara Consoni won 2 stages and the overall at the Tour of Poland. Well, Linda Zanetti took the second stage of that 3-day race. Up next, we've got the Classic Lorient Agglomeration. I miss calling it GP de Plouay, but it has a new name now.
It's Plouay.
No, it's Classic Lorient Agglomeration.
Well, it's
Plouay is far more fun to say.
It's in Plouay, so we can still call it Plouay.
The race formerly known as the GP,
Plouay.
Is the next World Tour race on August 30th, and we're like really approaching the end of the season. We've got like that CMAC Ladies Tour, Worlds, the China races, and we're done with 2025. It feels like it's gone by really quickly, but maybe that's just the newborn.
No. This year went by
It's
really
gone
quickly.
But I feel like, CMAC is, you could write a novel about that race. Like, you're not just dodging other riders in that race. There are tractors that somehow appear on the
And
course.
sometimes ponies.
Ponies. Let's talk about that later. We can talk about that later. We can wrap up this episode with obsessions because I have been so excited to talk to you guys about my obsession. And I feel that there really doesn't need to be any preamble, and I probably don't even have to say what my obsession is, but we have a new Taylor Swift album announced coming out October 3rd, The Life of a Showgirl. And it's not the album that I'm obsessed with. It's the podcast appearance, her first ever podcast appearance that she had on New Heights with the Kelsey brothers. I mean, for one, I don't think I've ever heard Taylor Swift speak for 2 hours straight, ever, but definitely not as relaxed as she was on that podcast.
Whoa, it was 2 hours. I haven't listened to the episode. I've just watched the snippets.
Notable YouTube podcasts on YouTube hater. I even watched the video on YouTube, and it was amazing. Like, it was amazing. I was going on for days.
What did they talk about for 2 hours?
I mean, they talked about so many things, Loren. They talked about her buying back her masters. They talked about like meeting Travis. There was a lot of bread puns, which was really great because she loves a sourdough. Apparently, talked about the new album. Like there was a ton. There was so much. I just highly recommend watching the YouTube video actually because just seeing how happy she is and how relaxed she was. It was a side of her that I've been a fan since 2013, and it was a side of her that I've never seen before. So it was really cool.
And if you could watch this episode, you'll see Abby is glowing.
She's pinging off the walls about this.
I was so excited.
I love that at first the whole internet was like, what the fuck? Why would she announce it on the Bro podcast? And then it's just been like this slow burn all week of people being like, oh, actually, that was pretty cool. No, it was actually amazing. And like all the Easter eggs, she's really known for that. And I'm not like a full on Swiftie, but it's enough in my algorithm. Thanks mostly to Abby, that I'm seeing all of these amazing posts of people being like, and did you notice that in the background? And then she said this number and la la la.
Yeah, 47.
And so
she
that's
said
been
47 twice. What does it mean?
Yeah. So I've been just enjoying like all of the fandom around it of people just losing their minds over all the detail. But my very favorite part is just like the great clarity she has and wisdom about just life stuff. Like she's obviously done a lot of work on herself. She's had a lot of therapy. She's lived a big life, and the way that she's articulated herself in these really simple ways, I think has like they're, making clips and putting them on social. So it's very digestible. But I think and I'm definitely not the only person to say this, there's a lot of commentary already about it, of her having this huge impact of like people's mental health and like kind of pushing back the dial on the toxic masculinity and just having this really safe space for like this huge range of the audience that are watching for her and also for the guys. And like, it's just such a great collab for so many reasons, not just because of Taylor's album.
I think I've sent you guys maybe 3 times the clip of her talking about how you need to think of your energy as currency.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So good. Are there any other
we can all learn something.
Yeah.
We can all learn something from Taylor Swift this week. No, I would say that would be my obsession as well. Not as obsessed as Abby, but definitely enjoying it a lot.
No one really can be, to be fair.
No.
I think there'd be like a million Swifties who would argue against that.
Yeah, actually,
I mean, I'd like to see a more extreme version.
No, I'm a very mild Taylor Swift fan. I'm barely a fan compared to a lot of her fans, which I think is probably a problem. To be fair, not for me, like a problem that there are so many people that are as obsessed with her as they are, but people always I was told not to talk about Taylor Swift on the podcast anymore by management. And then when I released the newsletter last week, Kaylee, like immediately after I sent it, he was like, I was really disappointed to see that Taylor Swift didn't make the headline. And I was like, you're the one who told me not to talk about Taylor Swift on the podcast anymore so that people would stop complaining to you. And he was like, everyone makes mistakes, Abby.
Just make it the podcast title.
I tried, Loren. I tried for the podcast. I tried for this podcast to be called Freewheeling, and then in brackets Abby's version, and that was shut down.
I remember that, but I'm sure you can think of like some sort of line in her lyrics from some song that can relate to this podcast, and that can be the Easter egg.
Oh, I'll try, but I'm really not that creative. But I will try. Her bread puns were incredible. I mean, that was a highlight of the podcast, was her bread puns.
I will put it on my to watch list, not just to listen, to watch list, because I have been the most unfit I've been in a really long time. And I need to jump back on Zwift and just get started with getting fit again. Because last week I went on a week's vacation. That's my obsession, actually. A week of relaxing with my family, like the extended family, in the Ventoux region in the southern France. And we happened to go during a heat wave, which anyone who knows me, I don't do so well in heat. But it was still a lovely vacation. The pool at the house we were staying at was ice cold, so it was lovely. But I did the Ventoux, and it was horrific. And I would not recommend climbing a mountain when you have such limited fitness and it's 35 degrees. It was a great bonding experience between my husband and I. We rode most of it together. When I begged him to stop for a cola with 6Ks to go, he did. But then, like, that revitalized me. And then I was like an Energizer bunny for the last bit. But then it completely ruined him stopping because he is so unfit that he had to just keep going. And the stop destroyed him. That last 6 kilometers, he had to stop 10 times.
The photo you put where you're both at the top of the climb and you're smiling and he just looks like he's died like 4 times in the last like 2 hours of his life. I was cracking up. Like he just like didn't even look at the camera. It was just like, I hate my life right now. So amazing.
But like I was heavy breathing. So anyone who's ridden Ventoux, you know, the first part is like really casual. You get to ease into it. We were having a nice conversation. We were even catching some people. We got a bit too excited. And then you do this left-hander on this hairpin and it just goes boof, like straight up. And I was like, okay, you've got this, Loren. Just settle into your rhythm. I was pushing a little bit too hard. Harness was just matching me. And then like I just started breathing heavy for the next 11 kilometers. And I was having like some serious moments on the bike. I actually broke into tears at one point.
Oh, no.
Because I decided to put on some music to get me through. So I put on some music and it was like my son's song and it just broke me for about a minute. I just started like weeping and then I was like, come on, you can do this. And I got out of the saddle and yeah, it was quite an epic day out on the bike. It took us so long to do that climb. But I have heard a rumor that maybe the Tour de France Femme might go near that region next year.
Loren.
So I'll have great insight into how horrific that climb is.
So Georgie can start to prepare
so
for L'Etape next year already.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about crying on a climb.
I'll do it.
For God's sake. Col de la Madeleine.
Volunteer as tribute.
That's my obsession. Sorry for the long-winded explanation. I'm not obsessed with the Ventoux. I'm obsessed with the family time.
I love that.
My obsession is I stick on tattoos. Got back into it this weekend at a function, and forgot how much fun you can have.
Oh my God, Lila loves temporary tattoos.
Like
when you come visit, you will be covered. Like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Georgie, did you have like proper like cool ones that made you look like you had a sleeve, or did you have stupid ones like kid ones?
Hey.
No, proper cool ones. Like I have one that's like it was pirate themed, so like I had a mermaid on my neck.
Oh, cool. I'm disappointed that it's gone. Oh, I guess you have to show up to work.
I had job this morning in the city. Where, I was scrubbing. I had like it was probably like 30 centimeter long one down my chest that I also had to scrub this morning, which now my chest is very sore and raw. But I left the one on my stomach because I'm not going to be showing my stomach in the office, and that one is about like 1 foot and it covers my entire abdomen lengthways.
Where did you get such? Because I'm just thinking back to when I was a kid. They were like, maybe 3 to 5 centimeters maximum. Where did you get these epic?
Oh, it's the temporary tattoo business is booming.
I did
That's
not
all I
know
have
this.
to say, like,
Okay.
oh yeah,
Good to
and
know.
like it's it just was like I just wanted more, and little ones on my face. It was.
you should do
it was
the
a
Post
There
time.
better
Malone
be some
ones.
pics that you send us.
Yeah, seriously. I need pics.
Where are the pictures?
Yeah.
That's also need some pics.
What's the Post Malone one?
Post Malone, he's got the like always tired on his cheeks, and he's got barbed wire across his head, and I think they literally sell like a Post Malone temporary tattoo pack, or at least they did when he was like really
Wow.
popular. Temporary tattoos are a huge thing in Latvia, and so Lila gets them all the time for like gifts and stuff, and she's almost always going to school like covered in temporary tattoos. Oh, that's really cool.
Oh wow.
Yeah, sick, right? Like I reckon, like sorry, mum, but like a neck tap.
No. Well, you do whatever
No,
you want. You do
temporary.
whatever you want. You can get a neck tat. I support you.
We'll put it to the readers,
Abby.
listeners.
Abby's covered in actual
Georgie get the next
tattoos,
step?
and she says, "No."
Not on my neck or my face. I feel like that's actually no. I do want one on my neck, so I want one behind my ear. So never mind.
Yeah, well, that's what we call what we call a hypocrite, Abby.
Hey Abby, does Tom's have any tattoos?
Yeah, he has one that says, I mean, it's in Latvian, but it says 100% Latvian basically on his back with a sword that he got when we were courting, and so I think he wanted to like impress me because I do have some tattoos. And then when he crashed at Tour California that time in 2017, he like stripped all of like that's exactly where he hit the ground, and so the road rash took off most of it, and then it got infected, which then more of it came off, so now it's like half of it is there and you can't really see it. But he's gonna
gosh.
get another one. I think he keeps talking about it. But Gracie, have my tattoo appointment not booked, but I've been chatting with my tattoo artist in Girona, and we are going to do a wolf in a cowboy hat. So then it's on you. Circling back to like, I don't know if this was all on the podcast we had this conversation or if it was before or after.
I have not heard this yet. So this is all
No,
new.
have I.
Has it been in the group chat? I don't think
No,
so.
Gracie and
Maybe
when we were talking about hats, and you and Gracie and Georgie put on their hats.
Oh, all the hats. Yeah.
And then we were
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about tattoos.
Yeah.
hat thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
do it. I'm gonna do the wolf in a cowboy hat tattoo.
Cute.
Oh, damn.
So then it's up
Sick.
to you guys
Wow.
what animals and hats you want to do.
Oh, we all have to get
Yes,
a
it's our
tattoo
group
of an
tat.
animal with a hat.
An animal with a hat.
Yeah. I've been hunting for my next tat.
Look, my only. Oh no, I've got 2 tattoos with 2 different people, but the one on the foot I've already described how much my best friend regretted that.
You won't regret
Didn't
this
want
one.
to get it done.
We're all gonna go to the same tattoo parlor in Girona. They do fine line tattoos. They did this one.
You will never regret any animal wearing a hat.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you,
There's
Gracie.
never in your life will you ever forget that. Maybe I get like. I mean, I could always put a cowboy hat on my hedgehog, but then that would like defeat the purpose of seeing the mullet of the hedgehog.
No, you need a new animal, and you need a hat that is like a hat, your hat. Like, what hat would you wear?
No,
Exactly.
a baseball cap.
Is the hedgehog your spirit animal? Maybe figure out what your spirit animal is.
Yeah. I was having an existential crisis at Turigan, RIP, and I was going home because I was injured. My knee blew up, and so I was having an existential crisis. And I lived above a tattoo parlor, and I was talking to my Swanee, and I was like, I want to get an next tattoo. And she's like, well, what's your spirit animal? And I was like, looking at myself in the mirror as I tend to do. And she was like, and I was like, oh, I reckon I look like a hedgehog. And she's like, that's pretty cool. So then we had a look and found a hedgehog that matched the mullet. That's how that started.
Like,
and yeah,
like Sonic the Hedgehog?
no, you've seen my tattoo,
Yeah.
but it's
No, but I'm
60
saying,
euros
like,
in
did you
Spain
look
for a
at
tattoo.
Sonic the Hedgehog? Because then sometimes
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. We didn't look.
I don't know. I did a whole article on spirit animals. I don't know if you remember, Gracie, like 9 years ago. I have to dig that up and figure out what I assigned. I think I assigned you as a bear.
Yeah, I remember that article. I feel
And
like
I
we
don't-
don't really say spirit animals anymore because it's kind of appropriation, but it's hard not to feel like you have some kind of affinity with an animal. I think that's just like a natural human thing.
Well, we're all living creatures on this earth, right?
We will be back next week to talk about, stuff. Actually, we could do a Q&A next week because we don't have any World Tour racing this weekend. So we'll see what kind of questions you guys want to give us and what we end up talking about next week. I assume we'll also have a good amount of transfer talk to discuss. Thanks, you three.
Doesn't have to be about bike racing.
Oh my
either,
God,
the
ask
Q&A.
us anything. Like literally anything. You see what we just did, what rampage we just went on about tattoos. Ask us whatever
Spirit
you
animals?
want.
Tattoos. Animals with hats.
Animals with hats. What animal with hats would you have? All right. I think we'll be back next week.
This episode was produced, edited, and mixed by Will Jones at Red Bricks Media.